Good Thursday morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our conversation with former Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy. My name is Chris King. I'm the president of the Democratic Business Council of Northern Virginia. So great to have you with us. As we let a few more people jump into the webinar, I'll get a few housekeeping items out of the way. First of all, as always, we would love to have you join DemBiz as a member. You can do so at our website at dembiz.org. That's DEMBIZ.org. And I also want to acknowledge our sponsors and benefactors to the organization. They are Carlos Del Toro, Luana Russell, Tom Greason, Michael Cook, Montez Anderson, myself, Chris King, and Lori McNamara. So thanks to everyone who has supported DemBiz through the years, especially during this COVID period. It's great to have you sticking with us and staying engaged with us, and we appreciate that. So the run of show will be typical for these webinars. I will have some questions, and then I will open it up to questions from you, the audience. You can type those into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and I'll be choosing those as we move through the hour. So we're looking forward to a great conversation. Jennifer Carroll Foy, thank you so much for taking some time out for what is probably your 1 millionth virtual event of this COVID campaign season. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with DemBiz this morning.
All right. Well, we have a lot to get to. We want to talk about the governor's race, obviously. We also want to talk about COVID. We want to talk about business. But I want to start with a brief overview of your background, your biography. You are a native of Petersburg, Virginia, raised there, of course. And then you went on to Virginia Military Institute, where you are one of the first women and first African-American women to graduate from BMI. You later earned a master's degree from Virginia State University and a law degree from Thomas Jefferson School of Law. Professionally, you've been a magistrate judge and a public defender. Am I missing anything so far on that?
Foster mom.
Foster mom, that's right, for 8 years or so. Hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that, because that is that's a big challenge and an interesting role for sure. So let's just, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with your background. You're not as well known as maybe one or two of the other candidates in the race, although your background is extensive, obviously, and very diverse. Growing up in Petersburg, let's just kind of take it from the top. Where did you, or what stands out to you about your upbringing?
Yeah, so I have to say that, many people ask, well, Jen, when did your journey for governor begin? Did it begin recently? And I like to say, no, my journey for governor began a long time ago, growing up in Petersburg, Virginia. Petersburg, for those of you who don't know, has one of the highest child poverty rates of unaccredited schools. I believe now they only have one in the entire city, and was named one of the most dangerous places to live per capita in all of Virginia. And that's where I'm from. But luckily, I was raised by my grandparents, and especially my grandmother, Mary Lee, a Southern Christian woman who had me in church 3 days a week, who taught me the values that I hold true today. And one of the most important ones was, if you have it, you have to give it. That pretty much service is the price that you pay for your time here on earth. So even though my grandmother didn't have a lot to give, she gave everything she had. So she worked at Central State Mental Health Hospital. When people in our community fell on hard times, she was there volunteering. And when people in our church needed help, she actually offered up our home for people to stay until they get back on their feet. So I'll never forget, at a young age, my grandmother had a stroke and became a quadriplegic. And having to sit at my dining room table with my aunt, trying to decide if we're going to pay for our mortgage that month or for the medications keeping my grandmother alive. That is when my journey for governor began. The moment I realized I was a part of a community that had been ignored, neglected, and left behind, that I was going to a school where we didn't have books to take home. We had unlicensed teachers in the classroom, but right across the bridge in Chesterfield and Colonial Heights, they had the best of schools, the best of teachers, the best of technology. And so when you talk about fairness and equity and having everyone have a fair shake, well, that just isn't true even to this day. where some of the schools in Virginia are just as segregated as they were back in the 60s. So that's why we need someone new and different who's going to bring fresh ideas on how we make Virginia more fair, more equitable, and we move Virginia forward.
Well, and certainly it is clear from your previous interviews and your campaign website that you are very enthusiastic about representing the underrepresented throughout Virginia. Is there, of all the experiences that I mentioned, or even maybe one that I didn't, is there a defining experience in your life where you think you were one person beforehand and then you were a different person after that?
Absolutely. I would have to say that my time at Virginia Military Institute was that defining moment. So I ended up going to VMI pretty much on a bet. And so I was sitting in my high school JROTC class, and we were watching the Virginia Military Institute Supreme Court decision on TV. And it wasn't until that moment I realized that there were schools I couldn't attend simply because I was female. And so I remember the men in my class say things like, women are born inferior, that we have a place in society and we need to stay in it. And so at that same time, I remember hearing former Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I heard her voice and I heard her words when she said, women can do all things if given the opportunity. And I agreed. So I turned around and I looked at those men and I said, you know what? I'm going to go to VMI because I'm just as powerful and capable and smart as any man in this class. And of course, they all jumped up and protested. And my best friend, he was going to go to West Point. But as soon as I said that, he walked up to me and he said, you know what, Jen, I was going to go to West Point, but I'm going to go with you when you go to VMI because I want to be there to watch you when you fail.
Are you still best friends with him?
We're still friends. Yes. Okay. But I'm here to tell you that, you know, I looked at him and I said, challenge accepted. So he went to VMI, so did I, and another male in our class. And when they got their head shaved bald, so did I. When they put on a man's uniform, I put on a man's uniform. And for years, I marched, sweat, and bled beside over 1,000 male cadets, and they all knew my name. But out of the other two men who went with me to VMI, I am the only one of us to walk across that Virginia Military Institute stage. So I have to say, yes, that was a huge defining moment for me.
So that must have been a source of tremendous confidence, I imagine also, but are there examples of particular challenges while you were there, either things, specific things that were said to you or done to you, or just things that were challenging about the curriculum that really stand out?
Yeah, so one of the biggest difficulties is coming from an impoverished community where there are poor and unfunded schools and unlicensed teachers teaching. Because my first year at Virginia Military Institute is where I really got a glimpse of how harmful and impactful that is. When you have to have, you know, basically tutors for in almost every single course except for PE, that is a serious problem.
Mm-hmm.
Not due to any fault of my own, just to faulty funding, the lack of time of attention and false promises that politicians have made about education and our children and the investments that need to be made into communities. And so that's where I learned the real connection with that. But I can tell you that, you know, my time at VMI, there's a saying that I like to say, you know, VMI is, you know, a hard, you know, awful place to be sometimes. But I tell you, it's a great place to be from. Because when I say I'm from Virginia Military Institute, nothing else needs to be said. People know the stock that you come from. They know what you're about, that the values of integrity and honor and self-discipline is paramount for you. And you're, you know, tried and tested. We have an honor court system that's second to none. We learned that failure is not an option, that we lead from the front. We don't ask permission to do what's right for the people of Virginia, and it's always service above self. So when people say, well, Jen, you know, now you're running, now is your time, it's absolutely. And it's because those values that VMI instilled in me, that when you see challenges and opportunities, then you take it. And right now we have a great opportunity to address and build back our healthcare system, our economy, our environment in a way that is rooted in equity and that will uplift all communities and move Virginia to the 21st century.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. All right, so let's move on to your professional life. You've been a magistrate judge, you've been a public defender well, I forgot to mention in your bio that you were elected in 2017 to the Virginia House of Delegates in the 2nd District. which covers parts of Stafford and Prince William counties. You're obviously now running for governor. Is there a theme that runs throughout your professional life, you think?
That's a really great question. I've never been asked that before, Chris. So I have to
First
say,
time for everything.
it sure is. I have to say the theme is, well, one of the things that my my husband will always, sometimes challenge me is that he says, Jen, sometimes you have to take the cape off. Because when I see injustice and when I see unfairness, that's what moves me. People are my passion. That's why I left being a magistrate judge to go be a public defender, because I saw that in Virginia we have a two-tier criminal justice system. You're more likely to sit in jail pre-trial before being found guilty of a thing if you are Black, poor, and innocent than if you're white, wealthy, and guilty. We have a justice for profit system. And I was a part of that system. And I said, you know what? I could be a part of the problem or be a part of the solution. So people should have good representation in court, no matter what their zip code is or how much is in their bank account. And so that's what moves me. It's why I went to VMI, because when you're trying to relegate women to second class citizenship, I'm here to say that that's not going to happen. So breaking down barriers and blazing trails when none previously existed is something that I'm used to, is something that I'm good at, is something I'm passionate about, because it's all about making it better for the generations that's coming behind us. Even becoming a legislator, when I saw the divisive rhetoric and partisan politics that were spreading not only in DC, but in Richmond, I didn't want to complain. I wanted to do. And so it's about turning advocacy into action. And that's why I went down to Richmond and made Virginia the 38th state to finally enshrine women's equality into the Constitution, along with the advocates. I passed bills to help veterans open small businesses, diversify the teacher workforce, put millions of dollars into job skills training, because those are the things that's important. And I felt like people weren't focusing on the things that were affecting our everyday life. We have to focus on more of what unites us than what divides us. And those conversations just weren't being had. So I have to say that that is pretty much the theme for Jennifer Carroll Foy.
Okay. Which leads naturally into my next question. Being a delegate gives you somewhat of a platform in public policy. Governor is a different story entirely. Why did you step down from your delegate seat, and why are you running for governor? What is it about that job that appeals to you?
Yes, thank you for that question. And so I have to say that it's a number of reasons that went into me stepping down from being the delegate here in the second district. So number one is tradition. So, Brian Moran, when he ran in 2009, he was minority leader and he stepped down in order to run for governor. Stacey Abrams, she did the exact same thing in Georgia. She was minority leader and in the General Assembly, and she stepped down right before her session in order to have, full reign of her primary. And then you have Ron, DeSantis. You have so many examples of state assembly members that when they run for governor, they step down. And it's for a multitude of reasons. The first is that you want someone who will be wholly focused on the district and fulfilling the needs. As we all kind of see now, they're meeting 7 days a week. Some people are in committees and sessions and hearings for up to 8 hours, 9 hours a day. And so running for governor is a full-time obligation and job if you're going to do it well and do it right. So I didn't want to hedge my bets. I didn't want to have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I am all in running for governor. I run to win, and that's very clear. Also, it's the best decision for my family. So, I am still working. I have to Comcast, Dominion, they want their money. And so at the end of the day, I had to do what makes sense for my family. So working 2 jobs, raising 2 3-year-olds, and running for governor, I think that's good. And we'll stop.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. So yeah. And then the second part of the question was, tell me one more time.
So I asked you why you stepped down, and then why governor.
Yes, and why governor? So I have to say that as a legislator, it's about negotiation and compromise. It's also about respect and relationships, which I figured out very early on. That's how I've been able to pass so many of my bills in a bipartisan fashion. For example, my broadband bill that I passed last year that addressed one of the largest obstacles to deploying broadband in Virginia, I had people from American for Prosperity to the administration, Farm Bureau to Sierra Club sign on to that bill. Republicans pat me on the back and says, Jen, great job. Because it will really help a lot of people in their district. So I've been able to be a legislator and be pretty successful. I passed the most robust package of bills for women, workers, and working families and unions in Virginia's history. And so that speaks volumes. People who've been down, down in Richmond for 20 years can't say that. Now, as governor, what I can say is that I will set the tone, tenor, and agenda for who we are and who we're fighting for and why we're fighting. And so, one of the unique things about being a governor in Virginia is that you're also able to help legislation along. You can legislate through the budget, you can send bills down, you can amend bills. So, how I can build those successes and all of that experience is transferable in order to be a successful legislator, to be a successful executive. And my experience from VMI has broadened my shoulders and stiffened my back. I am battle tested and ready to lead this Commonwealth in ways that I think it'd be very beneficial, because I understand how to plan and execute, how to get things done, be decisive, and work with everyone in order to do that. So that makes
Okay.
sense.
And obviously you have to get the job before you can do the job. You're running in a fairly crowded Democratic primary, 5 candidates so far, ranging from somebody who describes themselves as a democratic socialist, all the way to somebody who's been heavily involved in democratic politics for 30 years, and seemingly everything in between. Why are you the best general election candidate? If you're nominated, why do you think that you have a better chance of winning than your primary opponents?
So I know that I'm a uniter and not a divider, and that's important. We have to remember that millions of people voted for something different, millions, including Virginians. And so people are feeling unseen and unheard. And one of the biggest lifts for the upcoming governor will be uniting our Commonwealth, because we can't act as if the racial reckoning that we saw this summer or last summer did not happen. We can't pretend as if this last presidential election didn't show glaring issues that we still have as a Commonwealth and as a country. And so having those those community conversations, meeting people where they are, that's going to be very important. So there's a reason that in 2017, when I ran, I had more votes than the governor as a down ballot candidate, as a delegate, more votes than the governor, lieutenant governor, and the attorney general. And that is because I know what's important, and it's always the people. It's the voters who matter. The seat belongs to no one. It belongs to the people of the Commonwealth. And once they hear your resume, they hear my passion, they understand why I'm running, they know I'll be a principled person in power who will get things done to improve their everyday lives, that I will ensure to put their interests before anything else. That's what matters. And so going into this general election, I'm sure there'll be a lot of partisan rhetoric, and there'll be a lot of divisiveness. But at the end of the day, I focus on policy. I focus on people. I focus on going everywhere and talking to everyone. That's how I was able to win big then, and that is transferable to now. So I am running a grassroots people power campaign. I will have the largest, most diverse coalition of supporters that Virginia has ever seen. And through that, people will see themselves in me. People see themselves in my campaign. I am an inspirational candidate who will move people, because at the end of the day, we're talking about the primary or the general. We have to have someone who's going to make people want to show up, make a woman want to stand in line for 2 hours in the rain to cast her ballot. And we have to ask ourselves, who's going to do that? Who's going to inspire the next people when we don't have Barack Obama or Trump leading anybody's ticket? Because if we do not get our people to the polls, if we don't inspire the people, it's a great way to lose, and it's a great way to lose the majority.
Okay. And certainly you would be making history as the first African-American woman governor of Virginia, and I believe the first in the country, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be certainly enormous. I want to transition to business. We are a business group. Just high level, philosophically, I guess, if you want, what is your view of the role of business in everyday life and in Virginia? We can talk a little bit more in detail about where Virginia stands in some of these rankings, but high level, what do you think of business?
I think business is the backbone of Virginia, not just our economy, but everything. It deals with our education system, our infrastructure. It deals with our, rankings in the global economy. It deals with our farmers. Every aspect of every part of life in Virginia goes back to business. And so that's why I have such an emphasis. I was the first gubernatorial candidate to put out my jobs and economic development plan because it's that important. And when you look at my plan, it is detailed, it is precise, it is intentional. So I've looked at the Go Virginia initiatives. I've talked to the people at Virginia Chamber of Commerce. I've been working with Virginia Economic Development Partnership to bring the experts along. I created my own council called the Rebuild Virginia Economic Council, where I brought industry and small business leaders throughout all of the Commonwealth together to tell me, what do you need? Because I believe in a bottoms up approach, not a top down. And that's where I've gotten most of my bills from, talking to the people and having community conversations. So I know that business is important. It is everything. And my number one job as governor is to ensure that we're not only the number one place to do business, but also the best place to live, work, and raise a family.
Well, and that leads into my next question, which is Virginia is consistently ranked in the top five states in the country for business, but bottom five for workers. How do we figure that situation out and improve it?
Sure. So I think that there is false messaging out there. I think that, there's a false choice that some people believe that you either have to be for businesses or for workers, that you can't be for both. And that's just not true. So I will protect our front line while also protecting our bottom line here in Virginia. So I would like to make note, and one of my most proudest achievements is winning the Virginia Chamber of Commerce Champion of Enterprise Award in 2020. And I was named the 2020 Policymaker of the Year by Virginia Association for Career and Technical Education for all of my work passing bipartisan bills to support career and technical education here in Virginia. And I will also like to note that I've gotten so much support from workers and working families and unions because of my stance on passing legislation to end wage theft and the misclassification of workers. And those type of policies are really important because if people are stealing from the state, they have to be held to account. That's healthcare they're not providing. Those are taxes to the state they're not paying. And it's just not right because they're taking food off of people's tables. So we can focus and we can win at both. We need to have a governor who has the political courage and the will to do just that.
Okay. And of course, COVID has added another layer of complexity and problem to the environment right now. I'm going to work in a question from our good friend Lindsay Davis Stover, who is asking, what are some ways we can help small businesses during this difficult time?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that question. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And I have to say that in my plan, and after having community conversations with so many small businesses, some of the things that I would do as governor is I will put $10 million towards the Rebuild Virginia Small Business Grant. And it's proven to be highly successful, keeping businesses afloat until we make it on the other side of COVID. We need to allow them to keep their doors open, keep people on payroll, be able to purchase masks and PPEs. So $10 million towards the Rebuild Virginia Economic Grant for small businesses is something I will do. I will also expand the angel investor tax credit. And so right now, if you want to invest in a tech startup, then you can do that. However, I will expand it to include healthcare and life science technologies, software development, marine trades, and defense technologies, all of these things. So we can have that private capital that's available for businesses, especially those who have that entrepreneurial spirit. I will have a tax credit for small businesses to be able to purchase masks and PPEs, because that is another burdensome, weight that businesses have to carry now to ensure that everyone is protected, but it's necessary because it's a public safety issue. So giving them that tax credit to be able to do that is something that's really important. And finding ways to make sure our one-stop portal is more seamless and streamlined and effective. So we gotten a couple complaints about that. We want people who are thinking about opening up a business here in Virginia, or who do, to be able to do it in a way that makes sense. So going to one place, getting all the resources, that's what we want to do. That's how we streamline the process and make it easy for businesses to be able to know what they need, what the timelines are, what places they have to visit. So that is something that's really important. And so I also have a plan for small and women minority owned businesses. As governor, I commit to spending 45% of all of our discretionary funding for goods and services with small and women and minority owned businesses. And that's a historic number. And that's something that I will facilitate and ensure that my administration makes happen. Also having a commission that their entire existence is for the purpose and goal of finding ways to streamline the process, expedite SWAM certification, providing or finding ways to have more access to capital, all of the things that's necessary. And then for my veterans, I will invest $1 million into a veterans microloan program for my entrepreneurial veterans. I call it the MVP. I'm really excited about that. Thought it was brilliant. And so also having more businesses participate in the V3 program, which has proven to be very successful. It's where we bring businesses and veterans together. And by the end of my administration, I pledge to have 100,000 veterans connected and employed through the V3 program here in Virginia.
Okay, fantastic. The question that always comes up when we're talking about spending priorities is how to pay for it all. Talk about that for a minute.
Sure. One of the things I'm really excited about is, I can say that I was a legislator, I was a leader in helping Virginia protect our AAA bond rating and put millions of dollars towards our rainy day fund, help make it so that we were named by CNBC the #1 place to do business, and also was a legislator being impactful by ensuring that, Virginia, I think it was March of 2020, we had the lowest unemployment rate, I believe, in modern day history with 2.6% before COVID. So what I will do going forward is keeping that in mind, being a good steward of our taxpayer dollars, is that I have detailed plans because I want you to know what I'm going to do, but I also want you to know how I'm going to pay for it. And so Virginia is doing much better than a lot of other states. Our revenues have actually been up 4% during this time. And it's anticipated that once we get more shots in arms and more people start getting more vaccinations, then people will want to eat out more, entertain more. And a lot of our industries that's been most hurt and harmed by COVID-19, which is hospitality, retail, tourism, entertainment, they will start opening back up, and we're going to see even more increase in revenue. And so just having a conservative approach, I say 6% at least in revenue increase over the next couple of months. Also, the legalization of marijuana, a bill that I've carried for several years, was recently passed by both houses. It's anticipated that we will be able to do that. So opening Virginia up for the distribution of marijuana, that's going to have anticipated $300 million in average in revenue that we see. 40% of that will be dedicated towards expanding early childhood education so we can have universal pre-K here in Virginia, which I'm really excited about. And then the other money that's going towards the general fund, some will also be sent for, drug prevention programs, right, for people who abuse marijuana. There's also cost savings with us addressing mass incarceration. As governor, I will end the 3-strike laws. I will end the mandatory minimums. With us doing away with the legalization of marijuana, all of those things are going to also cash bail reform. All of those things are going to help bring down the cost of our criminal justice system. And those are savings we can take into account. Not only that, but I do support raising the cigarette tax. In Virginia, we pay one of the lowest cigarette tax, in the nation. And so at least bring it up to the national average, you're talking about generating millions of dollars into our coffers, into our revenue. I also support ending the coal field tax credit, which JLARC and one of our watchdogs, the people that we do the research, have said it's proven to not only be ineffective, but hurtful. We have lost jobs, we've lost revenue. So that will bring anywhere between 22 million and 30 million in lost revenue back here to Virginia. And so that's something else that we will do. So, and also modernizing our tax code, because let's be clear, a person who makes $18,000 a year pays the same percentage in taxes, or the same tax rate, as a person who makes $18 million a year. So having a commission that will study ways to modernize our tax code, that is also something that I will do, and Republicans and Democrats alike have both agreed that needs to happen, and we need to address our draconian tax code here in Virginia.
How do you plan to attract businesses to Virginia from elsewhere?
Mhm. Yeah, so that's what I'm excited about. And so I'm really excited to say I have a plan to get the business here to the Commonwealth. Number one, we have to do better at our site preparedness. We are losing manufacturing jobs. We're losing headquarters because they need to open in 3 years and we can only do it in 5. We do not have the portfolio of shovel ready sites as we should. And so we have to make the proactive investments to make that happen. That's how we'll get those big corporations here to the Commonwealth. So, number one, investing in site preparedness. Number two is marketing. I will promote Virginia as the best place to do business to anyone who will hear me. And so we have a skilled and educated workforce. We have the deepest port. We have the largest Navy base in the world. We have wonderful airports. We have, great agriculture here in Virginia and culture here in Virginia. And all of these things have to be promoted. And so going out and seeking jobs and businesses to come here is something I'm excited to do, to travel and to talk and to promote and educate people about us. So we also have to put our money where our mouth is. And we have severely underfunded our marketing programs here in the Commonwealth. So working in conjunction with Virginia Economic Development Partnership to continue to promote Virginia as the best place to do business and bring those companies here is what I will do. I'll also do that by continuing for us to have a good business tax climate. I have no plans to raise the corporate tax rate. I have no plans on, doing anything that I would have to say would shake that up or steer or mess that up for us, because our corporate tax rate is right where it needs to be right now. I know some other people are running on increasing it, and I just do not agree with that. And so you can be sure that that will not happen under Jennifer Carroll Foy administration. And then also when you're talking about international trade. So I'm excited that Governor Northam released his international trade plan, and then COVID happened. So we are 41st in the country per capita for international trade. So there's a lot of room for growth and improvement. So I'm ready to travel virtually or in person when it's safe to do so, to continue to try to get businesses to come here in Virginia, and the businesses that we have to scale them up and scale them out so they can enter the market as well. And that all links to broadband. I have to say one of my biggest obstacles is broadband, because I can't bring those data centers, supply centers, manufacturing headquarters to places that need it, western side of Loudoun County, southwest and rural Virginia, if we don't have access to the internet. So by the end of my administration, I promise to have 97% of the entire Commonwealth of Virginia covered by high-speed internet. And that is a promise I'm going to make. It's something that we can do. We just have to put our money where our mouth is and get it done.
That would be amazing.
Mhm.
Now, we talked a little bit about COVID and as it pertains to small businesses. What is your view of the way COVID has been handled here in the state? Obviously, at the federal level, it was a mess. What are your views on how it's been handled here at the state level, and what would be your main priorities, assuming you took office in early 2022?
So that's a really great question. I think there's always room for opportunity. While I think Governor Northam has done a good job at listening to the experts, following the science, there's always room for improvement, right? And so some of the things that, now knowing what our opportunities are, we can anticipate in the future, ensuring that we have the evidence and the information. You can't make evidence-based decisions if you're not armed with the data and the information. So at the beginning of COVID-19, when people were testing positive, we did not have demographic information. So asking the administration to lean on Department of Health and everyone else to get that race information, gender information from the private labs, because we really knew the disparity and impact of COVID-19 when we saw it nationwide and how it was disproportionately affecting Black and Brown communities. And that's what led us to move, but we shouldn't have had that lag. You also see it with the vaccinations now. You have, again, the lack of demographic information. So making sure that we do not have those glaring gaps that's going to hurt or harm our ability to respond is really important. And so that's why I'm excited to have supported and help pass the bill to require long-term care facilities to disclose people who are contracting and dying from COVID-19 in their care, making sure that we do the things that's necessary to put the money where it's needed so we can have good deployment of vaccine. I support the bill that's coming through the General Assembly now that's going to expand the people who can put shots in arms, to create a process to be able to do that. All of those things are things that we need to do that make sense. Also with the Unemployment Commission, And so there's a huge backlog. There are people who applied back in July and still haven't heard a thing. And so putting the money into Virginia Employment Commission so people can be communicated with, we can address their claims, and also not cut people benefits off automatically. We have to expedite the ruling when an employer objects so we can ensure that people are getting the checks that they need. But if they shouldn't, then it's immediately terminated. So all of those things are things that we should and could do better. As far as being governor in 2022, some of my top priorities will be creating, number one, a successful post-COVID economy, right? And I will do that by defeating this invisible enemy called COVID-19. I will do that by keeping all of our businesses afloat and people at the same time, that there's those safety nets that's there. So we don't have an eviction tsunami, so that we don't, because you can't shelter in place when you have no shelter. So that way people can continue to put food on the table. Our kids can get the education that they need. I mean, all of those things have to happen. So keeping everyone afloat during COVID is one of my top priorities, while also trying to attract diverse, high paying jobs here to Virginia is also one of my top priorities. Because I say it's really two things, continue to put shots in arms and people in jobs. So those are my top two agenda items in 2022, and everything will lend itself to that.
And certainly the next governor will have his or her hands full just with COVID and the remaining fallout from that. All right, let's get to a couple of the questions from our audience. Our good friend Lauren Hershey is asking about veteran initiatives. You mentioned one veteran initiative as it pertains to business. What do you have in terms of plans for veterans?
Yeah, so like the two things I mentioned, the V3 program, and then also the $1 million towards the Virginia microloan veteran program, MVP. Tell your friends. And so I'm really excited about those two initiatives. And I have to say that continuing to uplift our women veterans also. So we have a director for women veteran affairs. She needs a support staff. And so all of the issues that's relating to women veterans can be addressed. And I can tell you that one of the initiatives I'm really excited about, when I had my town halls and panels and roundtables with my veterans, I can tell you the number one thing that came up every single time. They say, Jen, thank you for your initiatives, but you know what'll keep us here? Do you know what'll make us really happy? You know what we really want? We want you to make veteran retirement pay tax exempt. And so my pledge is that if our coffers allow, if we have the revenue to do it, then I do pledge to exempt retirement pay for veterans here in Virginia. It's going to cost the tune of $200 million. It's something that other states have implemented. That's why we're losing our veterans to places like Texas and Florida. We currently have the second largest population of veterans here in Virginia. A lot of it has to do with our proximity to DC, and we have great bases here in the Commonwealth. But if we want people to plant roots in Virginia and stay here for the long term, we have to make sure the climate is conducive to do just that. So as long as we have the revenues, and until we have the revenues to be able to support it, I do support making veteran retirement pay tax exempt. It's the number one ask for me as governor.
Well, that's big news. And I'm not sure if you heard it here first, but you heard it here. So there's that. All right. Michael Cook is asking, well, in reference to your experience as a foster mom for 8 years, if not maybe more. He says that he's on the board of a charity that partners with colleges and universities to prepare hard to place foster kids for post-high school education. Could you talk a bit about your work with foster youth, problems that exist in Virginia, and any steps that you would take as a governor to help these kids?
So thank you so much for that. And thank you for that work that you're doing, because I can tell you that oftentimes our foster kids go completely neglected. I mean, these are children where everyone has failed them. The schools have failed them, their families have failed them, their parents have failed them, and oftentimes they have no one else. And we know the staggering, statistics that if you age out of the foster care system, you're more likely to be, addicted to drugs and be pregnant as a teenager and unemployed and incarcerated. And it's just, devastating. So I was a foster parent for 8 years. And I always go back to, what if my grandmother would have said, I don't have time? she's not my issue, or wouldn't have made the investments and mentored me and raised me the way that she did. And so again, going back to the, if you have it, you give it. And so it's not a question of whether or not this is something that I moved to do, and I want to promote and encourage others to do it as well. In Virginia, although we don't have one of the highest populations of foster children, we do have one of the highest, age of children aging out. So once we get kids, we keep them. And that's where the devastating, statistics come from. So we have to do better at, getting our foster kids with forever families. So I've passed bills, to expand the definition of kinship care. So if a, church member or a teacher or a neighbor wants to take in a child, then my bill allows that and says that you are also eligible to get Medicaid for that child, a stipend for that child, because one of the biggest barriers why people don't take in other children is because of the financial obligation. It's hard to go from a family of 2 to a family of 4 overnight, and these children are going to have needs. And so making sure that we set families up for success as much as possible is what we need to do. And just because you don't share blood don't make you, not necessarily not family. And so that's something I'm excited to have passed, and one of the most ambitious things that we've done to expand who can take in children and get those benefits. I've also passed a bill so foster children can stay at their home school until the age, I believe it's 21, because, every time a child is moved, they're re-traumatized. And the average foster child is at least 3 grades behind. And so making sure that they have an opportunity to get a degree is the ultimate goal. So making sure that they can continue to go to their home school to get their diploma and continue to be transported, I mean, that's a no-brainer. So all of those are the type of things that I've been doing and working on. And I had my nonprofit, the Foundation for Foster and Orphan Children, because I saw the gap in resources. So you get licensed, you get trained as a foster parent, and then you're released. And we need, someone to call in the middle of the night. We need someone to ask, is this normal behavior? We need respite. And so as foster parents to lean on each other and say, my husband and I would like to go on date night. Can you take Tracy for the evening? Absolutely. So that's what we need to build those relationships, to make sure that we're all successful. So I'm excited to have led those junctures, to have passed those bills. And I'll continue to do more to protect our most vulnerable children here in Virginia as governor.
What made you decide to be a foster mom?
I have to say, for me, yeah, it goes back to, wanting to be more like my grandmother. I have to say, she was the most regal, stoic woman I've ever met in my life. I never saw her raise her voice. She never sweat. Nothing ever bothered her. She was subhuman. And I always think my goal is to be, if I could just be a quarter of the woman that she was, then I have won. Right. And so that dedication to service, that dedication to selflessness, that dedication to always lead. And she just fed so much into me all of my life that whatever I can give back, I mean, that's what I want to do. So I think seeing that and that being the standard, I thought everyone had people come from their community and live with them. I didn't know that was not normal. And so this is who I am. This is who she raised me to be. And at the end of the day, I just want her to be able to look down and smile and be proud of all the great work that I'm trying to do.
Well, certainly that is important work, and we appreciate your work in that realm. We are getting a few questions about right to work and minimum wage. What are your thoughts on minimum wage and repealing right to work?
Yeah, so I supported the legislation that came through the General Assembly for the increasing minimum wage bill that was passed, that increases the minimum wage incrementally for the next several years. We don't get to $15, I believe, until like 2025, potentially. I think it has to be revisited by the General Assembly again. And so I support $15 minimum wage tied to the index. I believe that people should be able to work one job and put food on the table. One of the biggest challenges is that we're subsidizing a lot of big corporations because they aren't paying their workers what they should be. So they are eligible for, food stamps and Medicaid and all the other services and benefits. So in order to really address these things, and it's a quality of life issue, then I do believe that people should be able to be paid what they deserve. We see it now with our frontline workers. We're calling our frontline workers heroes, right? They are putting themselves in jeopardy and in danger every single day, so there can be, food on the shelves. There, that we could keep our economy running. But when essential workers look at their paycheck, it says that they're expendable. So that mixed messaging, right? And so if we are truly going to say that we value our people, our domestic workers, our grocery workers, our bus drivers, then we need to pay them as such. And so that's why I believe in that so strongly. As far as our Repeal Right to Work platform, I again do support Repeal Right to Work. It is something that I have talked to so many people and experts about. And at the end of the day, one of the things that makes me very excited is the fact that we have a Biden-Harris administration who ran with a union platform. They both did. They were, I know Biden was endorsed by almost every single union that supports Repeal Right to Work. When you look at the legislation that's pending in Congress as of now, Congressman Bobby Scott has introduced the PRO Act, which will in effect repeal right to work for, on the federal level, which will basically do it for every single state. And it's been signed on by Senator Tim Kaine and supported by a number of other federal legislators. So this is where the country is going. And I'm excited to say that, at the end of the day, we can again win at both. We can win at being the best place for workers, and also be the best place to do business. Other states have done it successfully, and I am confident that Virginia can do it as well.
So how did you get to a comfort level on that you could repeal right to work and not have any adverse impacts to the business community? How did you, what solidified that in your mind?
Mm-hmm. Well, not only the fact that other states have been able to successfully do it, but it's also about what our priorities are. So at the end of the day, I am, a supporter of unions. I'm a supporter of working families. And I could tell you that one of my first times of encountering this is when I was reading a biography of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it talked about how one of the last things he was fighting for was for sanitation workers. And one of the things he was fighting against was right to work. And he, as he succinctly said many times, it has nothing to do with rights or work. It doesn't guarantee you a job. And it's all about economic opportunity. There's one place where women, man, black, white, green, blue, all get paid the same, and that is with a union. Not only that, but his other quote that I love is that he says, it doesn't matter if you have a seat at the table, if you can't afford a sandwich, if you can't afford what's on the menu. So economic opportunity, ending the racial wealth gap, addressing economic injustice, that is a high priority when you're talking about not only economic justice, but racial justice and social justice and gender justice. Because let's be clear, in 2021, women are still paid 80 cents to a man's dollar, right? And a Black woman is still paid 60 cents, Latina 50 cents, and Indigenous women less than that. So all of these things are tied together. And so when I think about fairness and economic justice and racial justice and social justice, this is how I think about it globally. We have to look at people in a holistic stance. And so if you're going to do that, then you have to tackle every area. And I know that messaging against right to work is strong. However, our commitment to treating our workers and working families have to be stronger. And we have to see that what we've been doing haven't been working, and we can do better. We cannot be known as exploiting our workers the best. And that's why, we've been able to, or some people have been able to do so well. So we can win at both. We have to have the political courage and the will to do that. Like I said, I've been on both sides of this issue. I have been awarded by Virginia Chamber of Commerce while also being endorsed by unions and labor and grassroots organizations who's been fighting for equity for a very long time. So again, I know it's a balance, but I know it can be done, and I have a plan to do it.
Okay. John Cartmill is asking, who were your mentors in politics?
Okay, so my appointed mentors were State Senator Scott Serval and Chairman of Appropriations, Luke Torian. I have to say that they have done an amazing job at teaching me politics, at teaching me how to maneuver, how to win, how to have conversations with people who completely disagree with me on things, but seeing it from their perspective. Because at the end of the day, my job is to get the job done. So I can have, appeal to some people moral, moral standings on things, or I could appeal to other people's economic standing about things. But whatever it is, I will speak truth, and then I will also move the ball forward, which is important. So I really admire those two guys, and they're both very successful in the General Assembly, clearly.
Well, Scott Servell is one of the founding members of DemBiz, so he's always very highly regarded around here for sure. What do you consider your best leadership quality?
My best leadership quality, I have to say that I'm a uniter and not a divider, that I take people for who they are. I'm able to have conversations with, Republicans, independents, and Democrats alike, and I'm liked and well respected by all sides of the aisle. And I think that's important because people, respect you. And when you build the relationships, that's how you're able to get effective. Or to be effective. So, for example, we were able to pass Medicaid in Virginia to cover 500,000 Virginians with affordable access to healthcare. And we were able to do that while that's a Democratic priority. We were able to do it while in the minority. And do you know why? We were able to do it because of Governor Northam and the relationship that he had with Republicans. And they were willing to work with him to make it a reality. And so that's why I say it's important. And I also think it's a cop out when people say, well, we couldn't get anything done because we had a Republican controlled General Assembly. That's not true. As a delegate, I was able to pass many bills while in the minority as a freshman, and pass huge wins, even while we were in the minority, because of my ability to unite people, bring them to the table, to work with everyone. And that's what we're going to need in a governor if we want her to be successful and really get things done here in Virginia.
Speaking of success, if please complete this sentence. My 4-year term as governor will be successful if what?
It will be successful if I can get my 3-year-olds potty trained. That's when I'll be successful.
So there'll be 7 at the time, 7 or 8. So fingers crossed on that, right?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, they will be 4. You said the end of my term. The end
Yes.
of my term. Okay. So
Yes.
the end of my term. Let's see.
Don't get me wrong. That's still a good goal for the end of your term too. But
That's all I'm thinking about. That's all.
right.
Okay. So I say at the end of my term for governor will be successful when we accomplish my top priorities. And those are bringing diverse, high paying jobs to every corner of the Commonwealth, covering 97% of all Virginia with high speed internet, and expanding early childhood education to every at risk 3 and 4-year-old in Virginia and making it full day pre K.
Okay. Fair enough. And, good luck with the potty training for one thing. Maybe you just explain to them that you're running for governor and that you're very busy. So if they could, speed that up a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah, they're the only people who don't listen to me. So
What piece of legislation that you passed are you most proud of?
I would have to say the Equal Rights Amendment. Not every day do you get to do something that changes our founding document. So I was able to work with our activists and advocates. What I'm really proud of is that people know the backstory. So I had talked to so many people in leadership in the Democratic Party and said, we need to make this the #1 issue in Virginia. And people said that it was a dead issue. No one was talking about it. And it was too heavy of a lift. And I didn't take that as facts. I took that as a challenge. So working with all the activists to do a bus tour throughout Virginia, educating and exciting people about women's equality, and working hard to the point where presidential candidates were talking about it, making one of the top 3 issues in Virginia that help us win the majority here in the Commonwealth. I have to say that is my proudest accomplishment, because I had a woman walk up to me and say, you know what, Jen, I've been fighting for women's equality and the ERA since before your mother was alive. And for you to have taken up the mantle in this short time and get it done, it's truly stellar. So I have to say that was my proudest accomplishment thus
Okay.
far.
All right. And we've got a new federal administration, the Biden-Harris administration. What do you expect the next governor will encounter with regard to political environment, how partisan it might be, Will it be better or worse than it is now?
Yeah, so I am excited to be under a Biden-Harris administration. I feel like the air smells better. I feel like the shines brighter. I can sleep better at night. Um, and so the thing that I'm really excited about is to have an adult in the room, to have people who are excited about working in bipartisan fashion, if possible, to get things done. And I think that if possible has to be emphasized because at the end of the day, bipartisanship is the vehicle to get there. It's not the end goal. The end goal is to get the job done. And so we can't compromise our democratic values at the end of the day. So I know that there are some things that we can work on, but where we can't, we cannot let progress be stymied by, our efforts to work with people who just fundamentally disagree or who just want to be obstructionists, because we are elected for a reason. And we have the majority for the reason, and we should use it. So I can tell you the rule of 55 was absolutely amazing. And what that was is, even if we had serious Republican opposition, such as making Election Day a state holiday, repealing strict voter ID laws, removing the signature requirement for absentee voting, at the end of the day, that's what we instituted and implemented Rule 55, which means we have 55, so we get to do what we want. And so that's how we were able to make great progress in the areas of, voter registration and removing the or dismantling voter suppression here in Virginia, protecting women's access to reproductive health care. All of these things were done through Rule 55. So we have to protect our majority at all costs here in Virginia.
Okay. We talked earlier about you have made it very clear that you want to represent the underrepresented in a Democratic primary where people have progressive ideals and whatnot. How will you be able to do that in a way that maybe your opponents would not, in your view?
Yeah, so I believe that, representation matters. At the end of the day, I don't have to empathize. I understand because I have gone without health care. I have worked minimum wage jobs. I felt the pain of being hungry and not sure where my next meal was going to come from. And so when you have a person in position of power who understands that, she moves with a sense of urgency. She understands where our laws fail our people and what needs to be done. And so it's very clear why I'm in this fight and why I'm fighting, right? Because at the end of the day, the wealthy and well-connected had a lot of representation in Richmond. And we have to continue to build a Virginia that works for everyone. So until all of our rights are secure, none of our rights are secure. So we still need to make more inroads with our LGBTQ plus community. We still have to do more with our AAPI community. We still have work that needs to be done for women and children and all of the marginalized communities in Virginia. So, I will be everyone's governor, but I have an eye towards the people who have really been ignored, neglected, and left behind. And that's when we show who we are as Virginians. Because there's a saying, show me how you treat your people, and I show you who you are. Show me how you treat the most vulnerable amongst you. And so it goes back to those Christian principles that I was taught. Your job is to fight for the people who can't fight for themselves. And so that's why I'm so excited. And we have this pivotal moment to change, who we are as Virginians and really move us forward in a real way. We need a leader who's right for this moment. We're not voting against anything right now. We're not voting against Trump. We need something to vote for. And I think to have a new leader with clear vision and bold ideas on how to move us forward is the ultimate goal. And that's where we are, and that's what we need.
Well, it's a fantastic comment, and it's been a pleasure talking with you so much this morning. Thank you for taking the time. I know you've got a lot of events going on. Voting is coming up very soon. It's easy to lose sight of early voting in Virginia, but let's talk about briefly before we go, the impact that that's had on the race, and just how do you remind people and keep people aware of how quickly this primary is coming to a close?
Yeah, so listen, I know that 2020 was a dumpster fire, right? For many of us. And so
That's putting it mildly.
thank you. And so I acknowledge that. I know that there's burnout. I know that people are, anxious. I know that people are still reeling. I know that people are still recovering. But in Virginia, we love elections so much, we do it every year. And this year we decided to do it early. So 45 days of early voting with the first ballots as of today being cast on April 24th. One of my lifts are to ensure that we educate and excite as many Virginians as possible to make sure that's well known, because people are looking for June 8th, but June 8th is the last day to vote. And as Democrats, we do well with early voting. We do well with absentee voting or mail-in voting here in the Commonwealth. And so we want as many people to get those ballots out as possible, especially in a safe manner while we're still struggling with COVID-19. So we have to encourage our family, friends, get the word out, talk about it as much as possible. And I'm also, trying to get everyone, even the administration, to help us get the message out that, 45 days, the first time in Virginia's history for a primary, we will have early voting. So let's get out there and do our democratic job.
All right. Well, we're out of time, but Jennifer Carroll Foy, thank you so much for joining us again. It was a great discussion. Best of luck on the campaign trail. Thank you to everyone who joined us for this. We got a lot of great questions. My apologies to the questions we were not able to get to, but we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks when our DemBiz 2021 candidate series continues with Lieutenant Governor candidate Sean Perriman. We will see you then. Delegate Carroll Foy, thanks again for your time and best of luck out there.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care.